Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Good Doctors Live. I didn't eat Dr. Erin or anything. I promise. She is en route to Philadelphia and is actually on her way to my house. So she will be coming to us live from my kitchen table. And I will remain here with you in my office. So just waiting for a couple minutes while Dr. Erin arrives and is able to join us. But in excellent news that I would love to share with you all right now, my TEDx is live. It is, in fact, out into the world. So I'm going to post the link right now so that people who would like to can head to it after this entirely exciting live. I don't know why I'm so blurry. It's because my webcam doesn't care for me, to be completely honest. And it routinely just sabotages my joy. But regardless, my TEDx is out in the world. If you are listening to this on the podcast, it's been out for a little while. A whole week, actually. And it's very easy to find anywhere you go. If you Google my name and the word tolerance, it comes up. But even more conveniently for you, in the podcast notes, we will make sure that the link is there. I am overwhelmed with joy that it is finally out in the world and that this idea can spread the way that it was always meant to spread, and that we can talk and share about this idea of welcome and inclusivity that I've been thinking about in my brain for so long, and that Dr. Erin and I have been talking about for a little bit of time, just a little bit of a minute. So we've got a great show for you today, we deeply believe, because we have some feelings with capital F about the 2021 Emmys. And if you didn't watch them, don't worry. We will not be talking about them. I didn't either. Believe it or not, I watched it on Twitter. So it's not something that you need to be deeply aware of. Obviously, we've got our empathy exercises before we get going and hanging out with Dr. Erin as she comes. So I'm actually going to go ahead and kick off the show, so I'm not rambling for a lot longer. For all of the people who are hanging out with us on the replay crew or on the podcast. Actually, you know what? I don't want to steal Dr. Erin's joy, because there's a couple of these that I think she'd really like to talk about. So I would love, hello, everybody who is watching. I'd love to know in the comments where you're coming in from. If you have thoughts and feelings about the Emmys, or if you have thoughts and feelings about the world as it stands right now and how it's hanging out and what's going on. I could sing. Probably going to have Eleanor edit most of this for the podcast, to be completely honest. So replay crew here on the YouTubes, I apologize for my faffing. Dr. Erin got caught up in a little bit of traffic on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, so our timing is a little bit off today, but fear not, we are still going to be the Good Doctors Live for you with no trouble. And we're together, for anyone who is wondering, because tomorrow we're going to be in New York City rehearsing with Trisha Brook for both my TEDx Chicago and my TEDx Farmingdale talks, which are coming up in October. And then we are going to Charleston to check in with our friends at Charleston Southern University and do some work for the Community Research Institute that we run in partnership with Charleston Southern University down in Charleston. There's Dr. Erin. Hi, friends.
Hi. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. So I haven't started anything yet. I've just been faffing. So I'll run the opening. So I'll run the opening credits, and then we'll start on empathy exercises.
Works for me.
Okay, let me pull up the opening. This is why Dr. Erin usually does this, because I get all overwhelmed. All right, guys, see you on the other side of the credits. Hello. I still love it every time.
Never ceases to amaze me. I love that so much. Well done. Well done, Eleanor. We love you.
Well done, Eleanor. At all times, honestly, is generally my feelings about that.
That's pretty much how we feel about it. Yeah. All the time.
Yeah. All the time.
Sorry, folks. The turnpike is ever a joy. Next time I'll leave the night before. But I made it. And let's get into our empathy exercises.
You're doing great. You want to cover the first one there, since I think you found this one?
I did find this one. Yeah. So we found out last week that a shimmering rainbow fly in Australia has been named in honor of RuPaul. And, we'll link it in the show notes, but you can give it a Google. Folks, it's a fantastic looking fly.
It really is.
And I think that's just delightful. We've named so many things after old white men. Like, why not a black drag queen? Like,
who also now happens to be the most decorated person of color in Emmy history.
So this even happened before that accolade for Ru. So we're delighted for Ru, and we're delighted for the newly named Opaluma RuPaul.
Love it. Love it with my whole heart.
I know.
Things I don't love with my whole heart would include sexual assault. So this comes to us from our Canadian correspondent, Jay, who lets us know that at Western University, students are planning a walkout amid sexual assault allegations. We'll link it obviously in the show notes as we link everything. But there was a sexual assault at a first-year residence, and the students feel that there is not enough being done. There's also been alleged drug-related assaults. We're up to 30 reported, according to students, and we're not long into the year. So things look not great at Western University, and students are taking charge and taking action. There's some great art with that. We'll be watching along. The walkout, as far as I can tell, has in fact happened. And I hope it went super well for them. But more than anything else, we wanted to highlight that this would have not happened when we were in college at smaller universities, or even the bigger ones. I think this pretty much happened at Berkeley when I was in college. So I'm glad that collegiate women are standing up and saying no, and making noise about it as much as they are.
Yes. Speaking of making noise, oh my gosh, I'm getting better at transitions. We are big fans of soccer / football. We are even bigger fans of the women's national team. And we were delighted to see that at the end of last week, US Soccer is going to offer the same contracts with the same compensation levels to both women's and men's teams. And this is something that members of the women's team have been advocating for quite some time. It is absolutely ridiculous that they were paid less and treated less equally when they were astronomically more successful. It shouldn't be based on whether you're successful or not, but in terms of who's bringing money into US soccer programs, a lot of that was coming from the ladies, and they weren't seeing the financial recompense in that. So we're hopeful that this is US Soccer jumping on the equity train and staying on it. Would be great.
Would definitely be great.
We would appreciate you.
Something else that would be great is if the FBI would do their jobs. So,
oh, Lord.
Oh, man. So this week, for anyone who missed it, the 4 members of the previous week, last week, 4 members of the USA Women's Gymnastics program that have accused convicted felon Larry Nassar of sexual assault. Simone Biles, Michaela McCroney, Allie Raceman, and Maggie Nichols testified before Congress that they hold the FBI as accountable for this process as well, and that the FBI knew about Simone Biles' abuse even before she did, because Maggie reported it to an FBI agent that she suspected Simone was being abused by Nassar before Simone had even grappled with it herself. And so she makes the point in her testimony that they could have prevented her having to publicly grapple with this. Very famously, when it first happened, Simone kind of came out and wasn't necessarily an apologist for Larry Nassar, but was very much like, hey, everybody calm down, because she had so gaslit her own self She had so buried her own self, and her own trauma was so intense that some perceived her publicly shaming Allie and Michaela in particular, and they have since said that they didn't take it that way. She was a survivor as well, and they knew that, and kind of all of that stuff. But she kind of says, you could have saved me from all of that, and you chose not to, because you chose not to do your job.
Just your job would be helpful.
Just do your job. So we've talked about this entire case a lot here on the channel. We've covered Athlete A. We've covered a couple of the other documentaries. We've talked about this at length. These 4 women are unspeakably amazing. And I think we would all there's not a lot of celebrities I think I would lose my mind if I saw. I'm fairly sure if I met any of them, I would kind of lose my mind. I would lose my mind. I will cry if I ever meet Rachel Denhollander. I will just weep openly. These women are heroes, and I'm honored to be sharing the same planet with them, to be completely honest.
I know. And like, so much of what we talked about was like the fact that they have to keep saying it, and so much of the onus on victims and survivors, the onus is on them to keep holding the institutions accountable. And they held Larry Nassar accountable, and they held USA Gymnastics and the USOC accountable, and now they have to come back and hold the FBI accountable. And hopefully this is the last time, but like, please stop making these young women talk about it. Please just let them do what they need to do to heal institutions. I speak directly to you because you're watching.
But I think I'm sure they were invited, and they made it clear that this was something they wanted to do as well.
Oh, for sure.
And so in case anyone feels they were forced, that's not what Dr. Aaron is
that's not what I said
at all.
No.
And so, but there was also there's enough out there. They could have just Googled a few things. But they also, I just want to say, like, from a fashion perspective, they all looked very fierce, very well dressed. I was very impressed. But also there's this really cute, cozy picture of them in front of a fireplace later on that night where they're all kind of like cuddling. And I was like, I'm so glad you have each other.
I know.
Always so glad when people are not advocating alone.
Yeah. It was fantastic. And I loved the pictures afterwards where they were just like, I couldn't do this without you guys. It's like the best. More of that. Yeah.
All right. And thus concludes our empathy exercises for the day. But here's the transition I just came up with. Things we want less of is the way that the 2021 Emmys occurred on Sunday night. We would like less of that.
You guys. I've had a little bit of distance. Yesterday I was quite angry. I'm angry about different things today, but not as much the Emmys, but like, it's a broken system, you guys. And that was kind of the discussion Dr. Kristen and I came to yesterday as we were chatting about it and finding articles. We will of course link them below. It's a fascinating exploration in Vanity Fair that helped us understand how the voting has changed with the Emmys, which we'll get into, I'm sure, in this Good Doctors Diagnose as well. But like, the bare bones of it is 44% of the nominees for this television Emmy Awards were members of the global majority, which is a way of saying non-white that I think is a bit more accurate. And all the acting wins went to white actors. And Dr. Kristen didn't watch the broadcast, but I told her all about it. But I did. And a couple things I want to point out first before we get into our own little pieces. So that was like, that's the statistics of it. They had a Black host, a Black DJ, a Black announcer, Black performers, and mostly Black and people of color presenters. And this is something the Emmys, the hashtag Emmys so white is popular for a reason. It gets a hashtag for a reason. This is a problem that award shows are having, full stop. When we covered the Golden Globes, we talked about the Golden Globes. So this is not a new problem, but what made it really interesting for us as empathy educators and people who talk about diversity and inclusion all the time is it was a very stark example of people solving this problem by pushing a bunch of Black people to the forefront of the camera and saying, oh, look, we're diverse. But what they failed to do was be inclusive. And so, representation matters, sure. Representation when you don't follow through with authentic inclusivity is garbage in a lot of ways. Not to denigrate from the actors of color and folks of all spectrums who were nominated, deservedly so, for their fantastic work in a lot of categories. But it's just hard to watch yet another major award show get it so wrong.
And even beyond that, just talking about what television is right now, some of the most excellent, varietal, diverse, rich, difficult storytelling on the planet is happening on television right now.
Yeah.
And 5 shows took home 19 awards. And we can say a lot of things about The Crown, and we have. Feel free to catch up on our coverage. I wouldn't call it provocative or difficult viewing.
No.
And there's sometimes I wouldn't even call it good storytelling. Again, we have receipts for that.
A lot.
And so that was a dual frustration for me as somebody who has loved television for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Guys, it's a statement for me not to watch an Emmys. Like, I love the Emmys more than I love the Oscars.
I think that's the first time since I've known you, in the 10 years I've known you, where you've voluntarily not watched the Emmys.
I had a feeling that this is how it was going to go. I didn't agree with some of the nominations, and I honestly don't care for Cedric the Entertainer's humor. And so I am tired of bits. And I don't understand why award shows are so uninterested in passing out awards and celebrating the people who win them. And I knew from past life experience that I would get just as good of an experience on Twitter, and newsflash, I did.
Twitter did not disappoint.
Did not disappoint. So from an artistic perspective, it's also very narrow. Like, this isn't a good representation, as far as I'm concerned, of the performances of 2020.
I know. And I think for me, when we read that statistic, and I think it was still in the Vanity Fair article, that 5 of 5 shows won the 19 major awards, aside from I think Michaela Cole in directing for a limited series, and like one other. It was like there's 21 major awards or something, and 5 shows won 19 of those. For me, it's like
was
the
Halston. Yeah, was Halston and I May Destroy You are the 2 that weren't.
The Crown, Ted Lasso, Hacks,
which, to be frank, neither of us had heard of until Sunday night. So that might be, if you watch Hacks, could you let us know what it's about and if it's good?
If we should be watching it, because apparently it's a big deal. And for me, like, we are living in this, and everyone keeps talking about it, like, golden age of television. There's so many platforms. Every week we get a new platform. We have they're getting really strong talent because they do win awards and they do get really good, like, directors and everything. So, of those 5 shows, I think they're all on streaming services. So, like, we have this crazy opportunity to tell all these stories, and everyone keeps talking about it. And then the awards come up and we're like, yeah, I mean, sure, we had 400 shows to choose from, but only 5 of them were good. No, that's just nonsense. It's not.
So one of the articles we'll link below, Vanity Fair, for anybody who doesn't know, is really good at the nitty gritty of explaining the award side of Hollywood. They have been following, I don't even know the history of the magazine, but like, it wouldn't surprise me if this is something they've been doing the entire time they've existed. Yeah. They're really like, hey, here is the problem. Here's the beyond the emotions of it all. So something they said to us that was really, to us personally, obviously they wrote this personally to us, something that is in the article that was interesting to both of us is that the voting system changed a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it moved from only groups of people being asked to vote on certain things, like the directors voting on the directors, the actors voting on the actors to everyone voting for everything. And what that did was make it a popularity contest. Because also, if you're voting for everything, you're not consuming it all. It's too much.
It's too much. Yeah.
And so you're just this is how, like, to me, in my mind, this is how Ewan McGregor won for Halston. A show that is at best mixed reviews, at best, and a performance that, while praised, was on no one's shortlist for this award.
No one's radar. I totally forgot that he was in it. And I was like, oh, why is Ewan McGregor there? His partner must be nominated.
So, but you're looking at 25 things you're asked to consume. 5 categories for each. So, like, you're watching, like, you're asked to watch like a couple hundred things. And you get to lead actor and you're like, Ewan McGregor, I've liked him in things. I'm sure he was good. Like, this is just humans.
Yeah.
Like, I was judging a book prize once and I got to the last one and I was like, I know this author. I'm going to skim and I'm going to read the last couple chapters. I don't have time to, like, actively consume it.
Yeah. And, like, we talked about this too, and we should say this, like, there were wins that were predicted and deserved. Like, there's no universe that Kate Winslet doesn't win.
Especially not for that performance
Mayor of Easttown.
Not for Mayor of Easttown.
I mean, and like everyone was raving about it when it aired, all of these things. So like sometimes you get people that like kind of squeak through this weird mass voting system.
And like Ted Lasso for me is like Schitt's Creek last year.
Yeah.
Where like I had no problem giving any of the acting awards to Schitt's Creek when they swept. Yeah. I have no trouble. I think what Jason Sudeikis is doing on Ted Lasso is something singular. I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know,
I've watched every episode of The Crown, and what Tobias Menzies did as Philip is not singular. It's a caricature. He did a great job, but not an Emmy award-winning great job.
Not an Emmy award-winning. And like, yeah. So, you know, one of the side effects they said of this mass popular voting is that you get shows that sweep entire categories as well. So like The Crown won all the acting for drama. Last year, Schitt's Creek won, and we both say deservedly so, but this is still like a bug in the system. It won all the acting categories. So I think for me, like, that presents a real problem because we still have like a white dominated popularity, like shows that are the most popular and accessible and get the money behind them and are promoted and perpetuate kind of, you know, I'm sure Olivia Colman's fantastic. Everybody loves Olivia Colman. I'm sure they were like, oh, she's won for The Crown before. She must have been great.
And ironically, she hasn't, but like she's won everything else a million times. And so it's like, oh, Olivia Colman's great. But I think.
And she's one of the best actors we have going. But like, was she the best actor in that category? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Also, they didn't give her anything to do.
She didn't do anything. She was hardly in that season. How do you win for being Queen Elizabeth when Queen Elizabeth doesn't feature?
Yeah, I have so many feelings about Peter Morgan winning anything for that train wreck.
We're gonna go on a Crown tangent if we
keep going.
Yeah.
So and let me say, we've talked a lot about racial diversity and inclusivity. So let's also address some other issues.
Yeah.
There are stories on television, and we've talked about them, about Indigenous representation. Rutherford Falls was not nominated. And I don't know about eligibility. So let me say
it was not eligible.
It was not eligible. Then I retract my annoyance.
We'll see what happens next year when both Rutherford Falls and Reservation Dogs are eligible. I would imagine Reservation Dogs is going to get some attention because they had the cast from them presenting an award. So they're
CBS
aware.
Doesn't even own Hulu, so that wasn't even.
And it's not even like a we're promoting our own shows thing because it's you know, ABC now owns Hulu. So I imagine we'll see some of that. But continue. I wanted to.
So we had 2 nominees for Pose. Want to say that it was the first queer person of Latina descent. I think the first transgender person of Latina descent to be nominated, MJ, and her name is
Rodriguez.
I want to say Rodriguez. I think you're correct. I keep saying Gonzalez in my head because I know an MJ Gonzalez. That's
I
not
think
actually.
I think it's Rodriguez.
So that nomination was great. Not even like, and then lost to a very, very typical performance. But there's lots of stories being told about ability levels, neurodiversity. We don't have a whole lot of physical disability rep on television right now. But if we did, Dr. Aaron pointed out that the stage did not appear to be wheelchair accessible. So doubt it would have been crutch accessible or easy for somebody who is non-sighted to be able to navigate
Everything was
all of that.
they had like a center stage and a stage at the back of the room, and both of them were step accessible.
So not great.
Not great.
Not great. And so there's also a lot of different sexuality stories told on television right now, and none of them were really represented, although you can argue Halston. But you can argue. But there's a wider range of stories that we are telling on television.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at the widest we've ever had. And one of the things that Aaron and I were chatting about at one point is that one of the reasons we love this golden age of television, and that like we cannot keep up with all the things we're supposed to subscribe to, is that a lot of the gatekeepers have been reduced. Almost maybe eliminated. So very famously, Michaela Cole went to Netflix and tried to sell it, and they wanted to retain some rights to it. So she took it to HBO. Well, 10 years ago, if she didn't like the one deal, she would have to take the crappy deal. And now you can shop things a lot more. And so that's beautiful and wonderful. But we also think that a lot of Academy voters don't like that. And this is our conspiracy theory. Played tinfoil hats at the ready.
I'll get some tinfoil from your kitchen since I'm right next to it.
Like Netflix has, of all the Netflix shows rewarded, we like bathed The Crown in glory. And if you want to pick like a typical television show, it's The Crown.
Yeah.
Especially this season, especially telling the story of Charles and Diana. So I just feel like there's some like crotchety, I'm not going to watch Broad City, guys. You can't make me kind of, I mean, that wasn't nominated, but like it's over. But like, that's an example. I'm not going to watch Pose. You can't make me.
I'm not going to watch Lovecraft Country. Like, shows that are experimenting with not only who gets to tell stories, but the way we tell stories.
The way we tell stories. And while I have not watched Lovecraft Country because it is not for me, I know I watched, as I said on Twitter, every episode of The Crown. And I know that there is no way that Peter Morgan is a better storyteller than Barry Jenkins.
Oh no.
I don't live in that universe.
I don't live in that universe. No, I'm sorry.
Very difficult for me to understand. But then again, here's the deal. We all know that popular votes are problematic when it comes to trying to change systems. So this is the Vanity Fair article essentially says we got to go back to the old way if we have any hope of actually getting solid wins here. Because then, there's some other things a lot of people really celebrated for The Crown that a woman won, which is very rare. And the fact that we're even very raring that continues to be an issue. All of that to say we have room to grow here. And my frustration, and I think I can speak for Aaron with this, is that the Television Academy does not seem to understand that it's still broken.
Yeah. And like, I was furiously texting with Dr. Kristen on Sunday night as she was keeping up on Twitter, and I was telling her things that were happening in the show. And there were a couple of things for me that I'll use as examples and then tie it into basically our philosophy on teaching about diversity and inclusion and privilege, which thanks Television Academy for the assist, but no thanks, because we'd rather not have to teach you about this again. But there were two instances in which it was very, very clear to me they had no idea what they were doing in terms of real inclusion. One was when the aforementioned fantastic cast from Reservation Dogs presented an award, did a land acknowledgement, was very authentic to who they were as people, as an Indigenous people. And they presented an award, who was best director for a limited series. And the director for The Queen's Gambit won. which it was a fantastic show. I really enjoyed The Queen's Gambit. He's a white dude. He comes up on stage and proceeds to open a 2-page acceptance speech and talk down the music twice, refusing to stop. Now, I believe people should have time. If we got rid of skits, people would have time to think who they want to think. But also, this is how the show works. You have a limited amount of time. Everybody does. This is just the way it works. So I get frustrated with people that he didn't have one more thing to say. He had a whole other page to read. And it was perhaps the most white man thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
In terms of taking up space, exerting your privilege. There's no way. And 5 minutes earlier, Debbie Allen had pushed back once on the music.
For a lifetime achievement award.
Which arguably she should get to talk for however long she wants. And at the Oscars, they let you talk for however long you want.
And I think the Golden Globes too, because Ellen took a minute.
Yeah. So Debbie Allen, who's this fantastic woman of color, dancer, actor, performer extraordinaire,
goddess, national treasure,
was getting this massive award. And she wouldn't have pushed back a second time, I don't think, because of that privilege barrier. And I think for me, I'll save that example. The other example just made me angry, so I don't need to say it. But I think for me, that was when I was they think that diversity is the goal. And the beautiful phrase that my esteemed genius colleague came up with, Dr. Kristen, is that diversity isn't the goal. Diversity can't be the goal. Inclusion is the goal. And privilege is the barrier. And I think that's the most accurate summation we can have for the 2021 Emmy Awards, because they thought diversity was the goal. They didn't see the privilege that created this massive barrier for them actually being inclusive and including the spectrum of humans who've been represented on television in the last year.
That's all we have to say, honestly. That's the summation. And done. I think that's a great point. And I think I could very much come across as crotchety because almost nothing I loved on TV was acknowledged last night, except for Ted Lasso, or Sunday night, except for Ted Lasso. But I'm such a believer in that we can spread wealth.
Yeah.
And it still gets in my craw that John Hamm and Steve Carell never won for their work. Still gets in my craw. Because honestly, the two of them we will never have other performances like those two performances, and that they have not been acknowledged by this thing that matters. And speaking of things that doesn't matter but matters, everyone's making this point in all the op-eds that you'll read. Vanity Fair makes it, NPR makes it, Linda Holmes has been making it for decades around NPR. Award shows don't matter. Awards don't matter. But in Hollywood, they matter deeply because it depends on who gets to write the checks next.
Mm-hmm.
So the Queen's Gambit guy, who, I'll be real honest, I have now no interest in hearing the stories that he wants to tell, because he burned my patience with his behavior on Sunday night. Not just a personal choice on my behalf. It's I no longer consume Ryan Murphy's works because he burned. I just don't. I have other stories, other storytellers I'd like to consume. Ryan Murphy gets blank checks written because of the People versus O.J.
Simpson. Yeah, because it won so many awards.
And there are, they will get. Bruce Miller got more seasons at Hulu for Handmaid's Tale because it won so many awards at the beginning. And this is kind of how this business works, because you can't measure viewers anymore, really. They don't have the metrics that they used to have for advertising dollars and things like that. So in a weird way, the awards have become an even more important metric. The social capital, the digital footprint is an even more important metric. So this thing that shouldn't matter matters even more, and we're still screwing it up. And that's what gets me. I think RuPaul's Drag Race is a masterpiece. I also think it hasn't been really good in a couple seasons. And I think we can have different winners in reality television. I will stand nailed it, because I think what they are doing and how they balance the chaos and the kindness is something special, to be completely honest. And that it's not being recognized, that Nicole by herself is not being recognized, is driving me a little bit batty. 2 years in a row now. I'm getting grouchy. Getting grouchy. And I think this season of Top Chef honestly was its best season ever. Its best season ever. And there are things that my husband and I are actually rewatching it right now, because there were like holy moments of empathy and community and family that I don't think any other reality show could pull off. And people, I think, and they nothing.
I think, yes. Okay. And I think the point that you made is so important too, about the measuring metrics that they have. And it reminded me of, the start of this conversation where we were talking about that it's more a popularity contest. So not only do they not have the metrics, they don't know how many people are watching. So they have to base a lot of it on how popular it seems in social media and how much people are talking about it. So thus we get nominees, we get massive categories so that you can nominate every single actor from The Handmaid's Tale.
They didn't all do the same amount of work, pals.
In supporting actor. And like, you and I are both fans of recognizing singular work, but also there's this spider crawling down my computer. It's funny. It's very tiny. Distracting. But you and I both are believers that like once somebody is recognized for a role, unless they do something dramatically different, we've recognized them for that role. So for me, I'm like, we gave Claire Foy deserved an Emmy for the first season of The Crown. We gave it to her. Did she deserve future Emmys? Did she do anything drastically different? Has Olivia Colman? No. Let's spread the wealth. Nominations are acknowledgement of your talent. If you've won already for the same role, and that goes to your point about John Hamm and Steve Carell, because we had some men that were dominating categories at the time, just kept winning and winning and winning. I mean,
Sheldon Cooper is not that hard of a role to play, and he's who beat out,
and he beat out Steve Carell like year after year after year.
Parsons is good at his job, but not that good.
And so, like it is, we are calling for a reframing, a restructuring of how we consider television, because we are both people who, were we not teachers of pop culture and teaching about what we can learn from it, we have been avid consumers our whole life. We love entertainment in lots of forms. And it's profoundly sad to me that like something that used to bring us so much joy, we have many traditions around watching award shows together. And like, it's sad to me that we're just like, oh no. And I'm now looking at like, am I going to watch the Golden Globes? Am I going to watch the Oscars? Do I care? Can I deal with?
It's entirely about the hosts for me.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be. They shouldn't matter, but they make them matter too much.
Yeah. So for me, I think that it's just a faulty system. And we have to do better, because it's damaging to continue to pretend that this is what diversity looks like.
Yeah. And like we said, it shouldn't matter, but it does. And so let's do it right.
Amen, sister.
Pals, that's us for this week. We are together next week and in Charleston. So once again, we'll be coming to you from we'll be checked out of a hotel at that point. So we'll be coming to you from a parking lot, and probably on our phones. So this is going to be really interesting. And we haven't picked a topic yet. So if you have ideas, let us know. Always happy to chat about, honestly, anything, obviously. Obs. So in the meantime, please watch my TEDx. And
please do. It's very great. I haven't watched it
with
yet.
Everyone. And yeah, I mean, like, tell your mail carrier, please stop everybody and share this thing. We want it to go very, very, very wide and far. And we'd appreciate your help in that process. And in the meantime, it's been a privilege that you give us your time. And we never take that lightly. So thanks to everybody who joined us, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Take care, everybody.